Hello, hello, Sandy. It is getting dark outside. It is my last moment to make a video for today. It's probably gonna get dark while I talk, but that's okay. This camera has some light that shines. The monitor has some light that shines at me, and so that works a little bit better than my other computer. So, um, I want to make this video for women to empower themselves and to stack up boundaries, to really create very, very strong boundaries. And there's so much I need to talk about. I don't know how to. I don't even know how to word all of this. I just have to try. Yeah. So my brother and I talked several times, and he was very sensitive, and he was very insightful also about his own life, and he just tried to get me to see it from his point of view, from his perspective that he was looking at things. It's just one of many perspectives, of course. So that's not the ultimate perspective that he looks at things. So that's one perspective that is also a true perspective, that sees things also true. But there are, if most people don't do this, they don't walk around the problem and look at it from the other angle. So for men, and that's why I mention my brother, because he does not see it from the perspective of the woman. So, which is my default perspective, it's rather difficult actually for me to walk around and see and look at it from another perspective. I can try, and that's just intellectual work. The emotional default perspective is that of a woman, and that is quite different than the perspective that the default perspective of a man. So very, very different, particularly in straight people. So so my brother is straight, I'm straight, you're straight. So this is very much polarizing. We're very polar opposites to men, to straight men. So that's why in general I get along better with gay men. Even bisexual men I get along better with, because there's a little bit of a softening, towards the female on the spectrum. So they have more insight into the other perspective because of that. That doesn't mean they're automatically sensitive. So, I've had some friends I had some bisexual male friends just as friends, and they were just more insightful than the straight man, even than the intellectual straight man. So I'm not even gonna talk about the simple men. They also like to be simple, the simple men. They're actually proud of it. They always say, I'm a simple man, I like big boobs. So now they certainly cannot even intellectually see things from the other perspectives. So they're completely stuck in their own very male-centered, self-centered point of view. They actually see women as enemies, many of them. So they want them and they hate them. Like as if that's gonna get them a date, you know. So that's why I make these videos. You know, I make these videos for all people, of course, not just for women. I make these videos for men too, for all people of any walk of life, because it's about mindfulness. It's about becoming conscious, you know, going into their own minds. That's the goal here, to get onto, even just onto the path. There's no fixed goal or something. This is the fluid path. The fluid path. A path is always fluid because we're constantly going, like on a hiking trail. We are constantly walking forward. So it never reaches a plateau. It never reaches a dead end. If we reach a dead end, we have to turn around and come back out and take another hiking trail that keeps on going, you know, like the Backbone Trail in the United States that goes from Mexico to Canada, you know. But the life path is an endless one, you know. Each lifetime has an end to the lifetime, but I believe that the soul path continues after that, and it never ends. It never ends. It eventually merges with the infinite cosmos, as I mentioned the other day and just mentioned many times in my videos. You know, it's because the infinite cosmos is infinite, and eventually the soul is able to merge with it and completely dissolves its individuality and its own particular learning journey as that individual soul. So it just merges with what I call the blue God, infinity, the infinite cosmos, the Gautama Buddha, Vishnu, Krishna, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Kenny Redwood. So those are all manifestations of the same thing. So Elon Musk, for example, is very close now. His soul is very close to merging with the infinite cosmos. Some people call it nirvana or Brahman or maybe chi, or I don't know what other words they have for it. So it's just, you know, some people call it source, some people call it God, some people call it Allah, some people call it, but they usually don't understand. The Gnostic Muslims understand a little bit more. The Sufis, I think they are also less violent because of that. So, but all religion ultimately is just completely loaded with misunderstandings. So, and most people that adhere to a religion are bypassing the actuality of things, because they put words, they will label things, they will fixate things with certain knowledge or words or fixations, because it cannot be fixated. Everything is fluid, you know. A religion tries to stagnate something that's fluid, and that's impossible. So it always leaps out of it. It always proliferates out of any kind of dogma, dictation, intellectual establishment of certain understandings, philosophies, philosophy fixations. So we can never stagnate those things. So that people need to become very clear about it, including scientists. So we need to become very, very clear about this. So far, there are very few scientists that are willing to address this. Two of them, my favorite ones, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake and Dr. Bruce Lipton. I highly recommend their books to everyone. They really widen our horizon, and they really get us onto the track of exploring, and that's what it is in this existence and in the other dimensions and our soul journey. It's an endless moving. Even when someone like Elon Musk or Bob John, or Greta Thunberg, those are Buddha level souls. So even those, once they merge with the infinite cosmos and dissolve their individuality of soul, be one mixed in, there's no more here are you and there are you, it's all mixed in the infinite cosmos. That is the infinite cosmos. Then it still moves because the infinite cosmos keeps moving. Okay, so it just keeps on moving and moving and moving, and nothing is ever fixed. I fix this. These are all words, and we can see in our language the words we use. They always come from finalities. Almost all those words. They are born from finalities, from finite space and finite coordinate systems, and kind of stagnated ideas and concepts about existence. So once they are merged with the infinite cosmos, and that is the blue God, it is one unit. There is no more. Then there is no more. There's no more soul learning in that way. So it's just that the infinite cosmos is then still growing and merging and becoming and creating and shifting and churning and being fluid and moving and always moving forward. So it does that then with its components, like the earth that grew. The earth grew because of little planets crashing into it. So the little planet was no longer an individual. It became merged with the earth. It became the earth. So in that sense, so that is the infinite cosmos with the Buddha level souls that are eventually merging with it. But it still keeps growing and learning. But as we are here on earth, we're still on our soul learning journey, and most of us are somewhere halfway in between, like myself, an indigo soul. Sandy is an angel soul that is one level higher more advanced. And I'm happy when I look on the internet, and sometimes I see people that are famous, or sometimes I see people that are not famous. So, but there's a lot of angel souls that are not famous, of course. Most of them I don't see because they are not being propagated, or they're not advertised, or they're not shown on the site. So there are some that have no views, even that are not even shown. Sometimes I wonder why, whether this is because it doesn't resonate with the masses, or which is probably the case in most situations. But there's also the corporate agenda that marginalizes people, and they might even put some kind of blockage program onto people's channels to prevent these channels from being propagated, like the opposite of advertisement. So I had this feeling that they're doing this to some channels once they see someone that hasn't become famous, but so to prevent them from becoming more seen by others. So the corporate agenda will do all of these things to prevent people, the average person, the average viewer, from coming across those videos. So I have the feeling this the child screening thing that they just recently created may also be part of this same intention to prevent children from seeing videos that will get them onto the right track in their lives. Because the corporate agenda, they don't want people to get on the right track. They want people to stay dependent. They want people to they want women to feel really shitty about themselves. They want women to feel inadequate. They want women to go under the knife, get surgeries. They want women to buy all these beauty products, endless consumerism, endless packaging, cutting trees for it, plastic consumption, endless plastic Barbie consumerism that is going on. I mean, I see the kids. The kids don't know better. They don't know. I want that glitter, and I want to be pretty, and I want that unicorn there that was made from fossil fuels. The glitter was made from mining operations that mine for minerals and metals. And glitter goes in the ocean. It is a real dangerous thing. When glitter ends up in watersheds, it eventually ends up in the oceans, because rivers and underground rivers, all of this eventually ends up in the ocean. And it accumulates in the organs of whales and dolphins, and they die a gruesome death. So that's why I kept saying, kids, be aware of this. My message probably doesn't even reach their minds. I don't know if it reaches their minds. They just simply ignored me. They're like, oh, and then the corporate agenda also has this, it has these campaigns against environmentalists. That's why they have these campaigns. That's why they use religion to turn people against environmentalism, like I said in the other video. So we have to be aware about all of these things, all of these mechanisms so many things I needed to talk about. Esther Hicks, for example. What she says about, she calls it the vortex, the infinite cosmos. When we're in the infinite cosmos, we're in that flow. My brother praised my artwork, and I'm infinitely grateful to him for that. He's surrounded with my art pieces in his bedroom and above in all the shelves. They're all of these sculptures and figurines that I have given them over the years, and paintings, and so that one room is full of my artwork. And he says, so when you're painting, you're not struggling. In that moment when you are painting, you are one with this. You are one with the infinite cosmos. You're in that flow. And I said, yes, that's what it is. And there was even another artist, just saw that last night on Esther Hicks' channel. So another artist lady that was talking about the same thing and was very aware when she's painting, when she was making artwork. In that moment, she is one with the vortex, one with the infinite cosmos. She's in that flow, and in that flow moment, we are at peace mentally, because we are flowing. We're not in a state of resistance in that moment. We are just letting it grow and flow, and that's what true art is. That's why a lot of Christians and a lot of religious people, I bet the Muslims too, they're afraid of modern art, because modern art leaps out of every niche and cranny. It just doesn't fit into a template. It cannot be cookie cuttered. It cannot be stamped in something. It doesn't allow a woman to be headscarved or beheaded. It doesn't allow anyone to be put into a template or put a label on it, some kind of fixed label, idea, identification. No, artwork doesn't allow that. Artwork is flow. It flows out of all of it. It's not violent either, because that's what the infinite cosmos is. It's not violent. Violence is a state of resistance. I see that in myself. But, we need to also stack up our boundaries in terms of, I live here on this planet in the 3D realm, okay? I see a lot of negativity. I see a lot of adversity in the world. I see the corporate agenda. I see what they're what their message is, what they're trying to manipulate people. They're trying to influence teenagers. They want people to feel inadequate, in particular women. That's their main target group. That's why they welcome Islam, and that works for them. They can use that as another tool. They have two major tools, Christianity and Islam. They can really use these tools, the corporate agenda, and they have summit meetings. You better believe it. They consist of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Eli Lilly, Monsanto. They sold to Bayer. So to get out from under that name, and to keep having their money that they have amassed to themselves on cost of environment, animals, and innocent people, they quickly put their money into a Swiss bank account. That's how all of this is being done. As soon as they get a chain reaction of lawsuits coming at them. And it finally did happen, so I think it's good that they were finally sued for pesticide poisoning people. So pesticides need to be outlawed. They cannot be used anymore. They're highly carcinogenic. They're destroying life on Earth. Okay, so if we care, we don't use pesticides anymore. Let's just put it in a box, write on it hazardous waste, bring it to the hazardous waste place, and let them. That needs to be disposed of safely. That needs to be, I don't know, that needs to be put into some kind of sealed bunker or something where the stuff doesn't leak out. We don't want that to leak out into toilets, watersheds, sewage systems, which all ends up leaching and dripping and somehow making its way into the ocean, killing life in the ocean, which is gruesome, absolutely gruesome. The whales and dolphins are even more sentient than humans are. They're the most sentient, more sentient than elephants and many other animals on Earth. Okay, so they're the most sentient, the most feeling, the most perceptive, the most complex beings on Earth, the most intelligent, and with the most abstract thinking. It's hard to, it's really, really hard to figure out a way to explain that to people, because they'll say, oh, how do you communicate with them? So I just know this intuitively. I know I've read a lot about it. I have been observing them in videos, and it's very obvious to me. They also have the highest altruism. They save species from other species. They save babies from other species, adopt them as their own, like we adopt dogs. So, and they have way higher percentage of individuals that are fully altruistic. So in humans, that's a very rare thing when that happens. Very, very rare. But the whales have much more cognition, much more going on, much bigger prefrontal cortex, actually. So when you look at dolphins, you can clearly see that they have an enormous forehead, prefrontal cortex. It's like it bulges out like this, like an ET. So most people, they don't think about this. They don't put their minds on it, like the vast majority of people. It's also not discussed by anyone. It's not broadcast. It's swept under the rug. It's silenced. It's marginalized. It's laughed about. It's put into categories of conspiracy or whatever, or voodoo, whatever, supernatural or whatever they want to believe. So no, but it's absolutely real. It's truth. It's happening. It's there, whether people believe it or not. And I struggled with a lot of people about this subject because I was petitioning for the whales in LA. I can't count anymore how many days. For years I've done that. Like 3 times, 4 times a week. I would be standing in front of a store at all seasons, with all weather and with rain even. And it was very interesting. I gathered a lot of information about human psychology. I saw a vast spectrum of different behavior in people and reactions. and belief systems and clinging to certain identities and fear, but what almost all of them have is fear underneath. It's absolute terror. And I see it in men. They have a lot of fear, and see all of this. I see all, and I want everyone to be safe and happy. But the women, just because usually the men are stronger than women physically. They have more muscles. They're usually bigger. In almost all mammals, that's the case. And the women are usually to the mercy, in those situations when they're living with a male partner or roommate, or when they're surrounded by males in a work situation, and so on. So the woman is usually the victim of bullying and emotional violence and physical violence. So, and it's very difficult for them, for most of them, to defend themselves against that. They're usually not near as strong, or they don't know martial arts, most of them. I know about one woman, she used martial arts, that was in Germany, and she fought off 10 men that attacked her in a forest while she was walking home from a forest trail. And she could do that because she had a black belt in martial arts. So I think in Taekwondo or karate. And she knew all these moves. And you don't have to be that much bigger or stronger. You don't even have to be as big and strong as the other, or even if you have several attackers coming at you. If you do that, if you are very good at that, you practice that for a very long time, you can apply these body movements. And one of those was like the horizontal wheel, where she was actually able to swirl herself with her legs around in a circle. That's that's almost metaphysical. So she did that, and she hurt them very, very badly with that. And they got scared and they ran away. So, but that's just a very rare thing when that happens. So usually it's the woman that's being battered and beaten and killed. So, and bullied on the internet, seems like that the simple men, the simple and violent men, they're not all simple men are violent, but I would say the majority of them are, because they're full of, they still have so much energy, they're young, and they have a lot of testosterone, and they're frustrated, and they accumulate anger, and they're constantly on the lookout to protect their own egos. And they feel humiliated very easily. They're emotionally very frail. Almost all of us are, but they're particularly frail in the way of the ego. The ego cannot tolerate any kind of surrender. So they were also drilled like that in their lives. So I feel also compassion for them. I see that this is a terrible situation, a terrible mind state. If they could just realize that they don't have to act macho, or they don't have to embody that mentally or physically, that they can just love their bodies the way they are and love themselves the way they are. They don't have to put out and act like this. They don't have to always be the best at something, it's not necessary. You can surrender to the situation that maybe someone is better at this or that, and it's not the end of the world, but they feel like they need to, they're stuck in that cycle. So, and out of this tremendous stress that they put themselves in, but because of the trauma of childhood, because of the dad putting these kind of expectations on their sons, and the bullying and all of this, that's all they have experienced. What can we expect from them later on? So we have that in mind, we can understand them, and we can feel compassion for them, but, that doesn't mean we need to let them into our lives. It doesn't mean that we have to let psychopaths into our country either. So I want to really make this very clear. Just because they become more accepting, or they become more whatever, jump on maybe some bandwagons, or they become more well-read and intellectual, or they want to, then it becomes an idea, becomes an identity, and then with this identity they don't look at things with a critical eye. So I see this all the time. So I highly advise all people in the world, for their own benefit, for the benefit of all, to always look at things very, very, very critically, and stack up their boundaries, protect themselves, love themselves the way they are. We women need to do this. This is very important, because most of them have been battered in some way, have been bullied, have been victimized, also physically. So a lot of boys have been physically victimized too. So I'm not just saying it's just women, so of course not. So this video is just dedicated now mainly for the women, because I feel strongly for them, because I'm one, and I know what it's like, I see it from that perspective, of course. So I have been severely bullied by boys long time ago, in elementary school and so on. And that even went into sexual harassment, and it was awful bad for me, awful bad. It felt like rape. And the helplessness that comes with that, So I can clearly, that's why I understand them better, because I'm a woman, I understand women the best. But I also understand men, of course, at least intellectually, and I can see, this is what they have been through. So it must also be very, very, very difficult for them. They must be under a lot of pressure, internal pressure and tension. So my recommendation to them is, take it easy, man, the men out there, take it easy. Let go of the clinging of wanting to be macho or the best. Let go of that idea. That's neurotic. That does not make your life better. That causes snapping, that causes war, that causes people to do jihads, that causes them to commit suicide, and so on. And the women, they're under this pressure of needing to be pretty, needing to fit in, needing to be liked, needing to appease society, and men in particular, and wanting to be wanted, of course, and the biological stuff comes in. It all is like, it's one conglomeration of things. And we need to become aware that We don't have to fit in, that we must love our own bodies the way they are, okay? That we don't need to beautify ourselves, that we don't need to put a mask on of makeup or hairdos or standing in front of the mirror for half the day or even all day long. Some people are, that's all they're dealing with. That's their videos are only about that. It's like there's nothing else, you know. Those are also, of course, the most sought after videos in the world, because the other people are all like that as well. So naturally, then that also creates a market perpetuation as well, and the corporate agenda gains money from it. It's just like it's an endless loop of corporatism and consumerism that comes out of this, and the tragedy of feeling inadequate and feeling like I need to, I need to beautify myself, I need to alter myself, I need to nip tuck, I need to do this or this or that. So that's very, very bypassing of what existence in this 3D realm is actually supposed to be. This, and I know how hard it is. I see it in the people. I see it in the celebrities that are my age. I see it in all of them. I can feel it 100%. I feel with you, all of you. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it must be, particularly for famous women that were the sex symbol of the world, that have this identity of being the starlet. So that's their identity. When they get into their 50s, that card house comes falling down, and it comes falling down like cold turkey. It comes falling down it falls down like a high-rise building that collapses into itself, okay? And I feel very sorry for them, because they put all of their cards onto that card house. So that's why I say, so we need to completely dissolve that. We need to completely dismantle this idea. I mean, it's nice to be wanted. It's nice to get all of this attention, and I can imagine how addictive it must be. It must be incredibly addictive. So I never really experienced this, because I'm also very stubborn, so I don't like fads. I never did. I've always challenged that my whole life. Already as a teenager, I challenged fads. I just refused to fit into any one category. I don't want that. You can't cookie cutter me into a category. It will not work. Whether that is in a physical group or category, or a mental or intellectual category, I cannot be put into a category. So that was my advantage. But even with this, even being this very stubborn, going into reverse, going into adverse, this mind state, I still have my biological needs. I still have been wanting to be desired and all of this because of my biological needs. So I can't ignore this. I can't mute that. It will come back out with a vengeance, So my mother tried to mute that in me. So tried to shame that away. And that I see that in a lot of people in the world. The mothers trying to shame their daughters into, putting a chador on into, and if it's in a different society, they'll put them into clothes that are totally unsensual or something. So they don't allow their daughters to express their divine femininity, and their biological needs and their wishes and so on. I mean, yeah, this is also a little dangerous if we go a little too far. We show too much of our bodies, we put ourselves at risk. So we put ourselves at risk of being violated physically. So we have to weigh this off, naturally. And that's where the boundary comes back in. We have to step up, set up the boundary. So we have to stand up for our own physical, mental, intellectual needs. This is infinitely important. So we cannot exist if we did not set up these very strong boundaries. It doesn't mean we have to put spikes on the outside of that wall, which I have done. It's like thorny, becoming abrasive, that's out of anger, hatred. Been through a lot of that. Let's not trample down on our hatred. Let's not mute that hatred. Let's not put a bandage over that anger either. It will come out with a vengeance too. So we cannot mute any of these feelings. Okay, we have to allow them. We have to feel it safely. You're not letting it out on others. Feel it safely. If I need to scream like a Medusa, I will do it. I will go into my room. Sometimes I even pound my fists onto my mattress real hard as I can, and I will scream terrible screams into my pillow. And I'll do it as long as it needs it, as this thing, this Medusa, this hatred needs to come out. It wants to come out all the way. It doesn't want to be silenced. Okay? And then after I scream it out, I usually cry. And I sit down in meditation. And I surrender to whatever there is. There are people that I struggled with, they don't listen to me. The animals are suffering, the petitions may not, they always have, they are always very successful. Online petitions work, okay? But sometimes it takes a lot first before it starts working. And then in the beginning stages, we feel like, oh, we're not making any progress, and we feel like it is devastating, and the animals are suffering, and the politicians aren't listening. So it can make us very, very frustrated and very angry. So after I let the anger out safely, I sit down in meditation, and I accept that what is right now in this moment. That doesn't mean I give up being an activist. It just means right now in this moment, I surrender to this moment in history, this moment, in time, in this time-space continuum of 3D. This existence, the world, that we can see, because of the internet, we can see what's going on in other parts of the world. We can zoom in, we can see some details that are absolutely horrific. And it's very hard. For people like Sandy and me, this is very, very infinitely hard. Okay. For people that are empaths, that are introverts, that are sensitive, highly sensitive, that are highly compassionate, that are altruistic. This is very, very, very hard for us to see cruelty in the world. Very hard. Maybe other people, they can't really understand it. No, they see it from a different angle of the picture. So for us it is extremely hard. But, we can sit down in that moment, and we can surrender to that situation, what is right now, without fixing it, without struggling, without just sitting there, breathing, and saying, this is what it is. right now. It is happening, the animals are suffering, and right now I can let myself feel that helplessness and breathe with it and say it is what it is right now. Okay. There's also a lot of people that I offer help, they don't want help. They're in resistance for whatever reason, religion, brainwashing, identification. Some people identify with their illness, they don't even want to get well. So all of these things are happening, that causes in me severe frustration sometimes, with my husband even too. So causes severe frustration. But I realize one thing now. I realize anger still doesn't make me suddenly super peaceful and I'm like Jack Cornfield now. No, I'm not. No, I'm not like Jack Cornfield. He's an angel soul, much more advanced, and he's practiced mindfulness his whole life. So I haven't, and I get angry, but the moment I get angry, I realize, I see the synopsis of it. Okay, here's my anger, here's this what I've learned. Okay, so this isn't going anywhere. I realize that moment. I may have already hollered, but then I realize it. And I go down into the now moment of it. If I go down in the now moment, I do not repress the anger. That's not anger repression. Anger repression doesn't work, okay? It never works. So I can scream it in my pillow. That's very helpful sometimes. Okay, once in a while it's helpful. Thich Nhat Hanh doesn't recommend it because he thinks then we enforce that these neuronal connections. Tony Robbins thinks it enforces the neuronal connections. I believe that it does not enforce the neuronal connection. It doesn't make it worse when we take it into, like in primal therapy, but primal therapy is very lopsided, so I'm not going in that direction anymore. But to take it in this moment into the room and let it out safely. That's also, that's what I actually learned in primal therapy. This was a life-saving thing for me, absolutely life-saving. So I go into my room, I scream it into the pillow. It wants to be heard. It wants to come out. We cannot be denying it and saying, I feel great this moment when I don't. That would be a violation of that state that I'm in. If I'm in grief, if I grieve for my dog for a year or for 5 years, then that is what it wants to do. I can't be overriding it, like that's where Tony Robbins is wrong. You cannot forcefully bulldoze your own emotional state because your own because that's your physiology in that moment. That's an entire physiological chemistry that is happening in the body, okay? Cortisol and DMT that the body releases, and unimaginable grief that comes from the mother instinct and the compassion. We must allow that to run through us. All of this is all part of stacking up the boundaries. The more we learn about ourselves, about our physiological, mental, intellectual needs, okay, the more we become clear on how much the corporate agenda or other people or religious people or groups or Muslims, etc., how much they have been violating other people's and other animals' boundaries, okay? So the more we become clear about it. So it's not just that, it's not only the burqa that is a violation. That's a severe violation. That's psychoterror. Okay, it's absolutely horrific. That can kill people. That can make people sick. That kind of stuff. So we have to. You take that burqa off. You set up your boundaries. Okay, and you also have the right to defend yourself physically if you have to. If someone comes at you and does not take no for an answer, and they come at you and want to violate you physically, if they do it mentally, you have to walk away. But if they don't even take that as no, and they come after you then physically, okay, you have the right to defend yourself physically. Okay, so that's what I mean with stacking up these boundaries, and my face is becoming blue now. It's the reflection of the blue god. So that we need to set up these boundaries, all of these boundaries. But it goes much further than the burqa. It goes much further. It goes all the way into all kinds of civilizations and societies, and into the Western society, into the Asian society, and so on. In Japan, people they are suppressing their emotions. Okay, that's why they end up committing suicide, because the pressure will amount to such a degree that the mind cannot stand it anymore. Can't stand it for a second anymore. Okay. They just want to end the suffering. But they don't realize that it is accumulated because of this society of pride and facade and certain image, and certain, you have to be composed at all times and all of this, and you can't do this as a woman. You have to, all of these, like extreme social confinement and role attribution. So no wonder that the people then, in the end, are completely in complete despair. So if they just started to look into this, into mindfulness, they can shed all of these shackles of society, whatever society someone is in, whatever they're dictating, whatever limitations they're setting on you, or even if an atheist says to his wife, oh, this is all bogus, or this is all that's all craziness or whatever. That's also a violation, Atheism is also a violation because it creates an end to something where there is no end. Okay. There are no ends in the infinite cosmos. There's no end. We need to we need to explore things in a rational mind, of course. We can't be like what they did in the 60s. They took LSD, and I'm glad they tested it on themselves. Those people I respect much more than there are probably some that tested it on animals, and that's an atrocity. But what I mean is, like, these people, they'll dive into something very dangerous, and that's not exploring things with a rational mind. So that causes brain damage, actually. We need to value our precious brains. In sobriety, the brain needs to be nurtured and nursed and kept in sobriety. Okay. That's the only way to freedom. Okay. Everything else is self-sabotage, complete self-sabotage. So we have to keep that brain sober. You cannot put alcohol, toxins, LSD, the hallucinogenic mushrooms, or any of these very toxic things. You cannot use any of these toxic things, or pesticides. You can't use, or pharma drugs. You can't use any of these toxic things, because if you do, even white sugar is toxic. If you eat junk food and to put toxic stuff into you, you are weakening your inner natural healing strengths of brain and body. You are actually suppressing your immune system. Don't do it. We need our brains. This is also setting up boundaries. To say no to pharma, to say no to the persuasion that is bombarding on us all the time, non-stop. Okay, we need to put the boundary up. We need to, and the boundary in a gentle way said, no, thank you. Okay, up to here and not further. And if they come further into your boundaries, you have the right to stand up for yourself. You have the right to, if someone comes at you with physical force, you have the right to use physical force to protect mainly your dog, your child, and your body. Okay, so the dog and the child come before our bodies, and then our bodies. Okay, so, and for the total altruistic people, they live only for rescuing others. They put others always before themselves. The people that go into burning forests in Australia to rescue the koala bears, those people put the other beings before themselves. Okay. So, and those are very rare, amazing people. So that will risk their lives to save another life. I don't even know if I could do it. I have not even been in a situation like this. I rescued a hedgehog once from drowning, so I would have jumped into that pool even though it was in the winter in Germany. So I would have jumped in the pool to rescue the hedgehog. I don't know if I could run into a burning forest. So I could run into the burning forest to save my dog. I'd do anything to save my dog. Anything. So, of course, we have our, not everyone is the same. Not everyone is the absolute ultimate altruistic person. So, we have our priorities, of course, But this is what I say to all of us. Your dog is number one. And your child. Then you have to protect your body. If you don't protect your body, you can't even help anyone. So, and then we need to weigh up the situation, and we need to do as much as we can to help other living beings. Okay, and that is my philosophy of it. I'm also not a utilitarian philosopher. I consider myself to be a love philosopher. So the mother animal philosopher. So that's my philosophy. So okay, it's already over an hour now. Okay, Sandy, I love you. Take care.